So the silver lining for domain 7 is based on the ongoing operation of security. So bear with me for a couple of seconds here. The way I describe this whole operation and what we can expect during domain 7. So domain 7 really speaks about this timeline here, right? We have a timeline of the organization. Okay, so this is our organization. Okay. This is the day, or let's call it the day in our organization. Okay. It looks like that. It starts, I don't know, 8 a.m. Okay. And this can be a day, this can be a month or a year or even 10 years, okay? Whatever cycle you want to look at. Are you all able to see my whiteboard?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. I think now you can see better what I wrote up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, again, this is a day in our organization. Then, along the day, something happens here, okay? Something happens. It can be a day, it can be a month, a year, or whatever. But something happens here. And that something makes our day look a little bit different. Our operation is now decreasing. Our ongoing routine, okay, is now affected by this something that happened. All right, and I'll ask you in a minute what can happen. But then as things decreased and the operation got affected, at some point we will stop the effect of the whatever happened here and we'll gain control of the situation. Okay? Here we gain control. And then after we gain control, we start seeing the curve starting to go back to where we were, but even a little bit slightly better in operation and with this slightly better in security. Up until we get to that point that we say, okay, we are fully recovered now and our operation can go back to normal. Okay, so this here is the business recovery point. Okay, as you can see, well, maybe you cannot see because it looks very straight line to me. So as you can see, there's another phase here, okay? And at this point here, we can say whatever happened here, let's call it the incident, is over. And then we really go back to normal. Okay? So this is really domain 7. Okay? What we say in domain 7 is that the day-to-day operation of the organization can look like this, but can also look like a straight line, right? Maybe nothing happens, right? But if something happens, we want to be prepared for it. All right, you with me, guys? Yeah, definitely with us, because I need you to look at the screen as we build this knowledge, right? But I only see Shachar and Valentino, so if you don't mind, just open your videos because I need to work with it. Imagine me standing in front of you with a whiteboard, all right? So this will help me seeing your faces, if you don't mind. So this can be the operation, the ongoing operation, again, of a day, of a month, of a year, whatever, of a decade. And maybe nothing happens ever in our organization. Everything is a straight line. All right, for the organization has a routine. We manufacture something, we sell, we do businesses here and there in Germany and outside Germany. And this is a routine of the business, okay? Nothing happens. As security professionals, are you satisfied with the fact that I said this timeline here is 10 years and nothing happened to us? Are you satisfied with this as security
Really?
professionals? What's that?
I doubt that nothing happened.
Right, right. I agree with you. So what do we want to say? What is our response to senior management when they say nothing happened?
I would say we need to do an audit first.
All right, let's run an audit. Okay, Valentino, you're absolutely right. The audit comes in a certain time and it takes place and it is outside of the normal routine of the organization. That means that the audit might be that one thing here that happened. Okay? What other things can happen that can affect the ongoing organizational routine?
Disaster.
What's that?
Disaster.
A disaster. Okay, what sort of disaster?
Force majeure situations.
What's that?
Force majeure situation.
Force majeure. For example, COVID-19, right?
Yeah, for example, earthquake. So you can think of plenty of.
Right, earthquake. What else? What can happen?
Power outage.
Cyclone.
That's all under natural disasters. What else?
Ransomware, power
cyber incidents can take place, and those will influence the ongoing organizational routine, right? The business routine will not be the same if we get hit by ransomware, right?
Pandemic.
Right?
Like a pandemic.
Pandemic, absolutely. Pandemic, force majeure, all mentioned. What else? How about regulation? How about GDPR?
Basically, everything that affects the business can happen.
Basically, everything that affects the business routine. Okay? Yeah. That's the state of mind I need you to be in domain 7. We have a normal, quiet routine. We are all pleasant. We're making our money. We don't need to think about bad things that will happen. As long as the weather is stable, our business is stable with it. You throw at me pandemic, cyclones, ransomware, GDPR, changing management, acquisitions, maybe the CISO left and we need to hire a new CISO, or maybe the CEO decided to leave the company and we need to hire a CEO. Something outside the routine happened, okay? So that's something for us, the CISOs, the CISSPs, does not have to be in relation, in direct relation to cyber incidents. This is the vast majority of what we are capable of dealing with, or what we can prepare ourselves to as security professionals, but there can be incidents outside the realm of security that will be affecting the business routine And we, as CISSPs, will be required to participate in the recovery. Does that make sense, guys?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what happens. Something happened here, okay? Let's call this one ransomware, okay? Ransomware hit the company. It hit one of the main assets of the company. Let's say we have 3 main assets of the company, okay? It hit one of them. This period of time here, okay, this one is now our loss, okay? Losses, okay? We lose operation, we lose money, we lose clients, we lose time, we lose what? We lose resources. We lose attention because instead of putting the attention on whatever made us money here, we put attention in this one, okay? So these are our losses. And what you do in business, you want to, what you would do with losses in business? What do you want to do with them? What do you do with losses? If you lose money,
We want to recover them.
hang on, before you recover, what do you want to do when you know that you lose money? What do you do with losses?
Insurance, like
You cut losses. Cut your losses, okay? How do you cut your losses in cyber incident?
With controls.
You do containment,
Uh-huh.
okay? Containment means that you gain control over the incident. You cut your losses by gaining containment, gaining control of the incident. So you don't lose money anymore. However, your ongoing operation decreased, right? This is a decrease in your ongoing operation. You are here where you're supposed to be here. You see that? This is where you are today. This is where you are after you gain control, and this is not a good standing of your business. That's why you want to go back. So what do you do here? After you lost all this money, what do you do here? What is this part?
Try to recuperate.
What's that?
You try to recuperate your losses.
This is
Couple. The meditation.
exactly. But remediation will take you only up to here, right? This is when you remediate. But since you already lost money, right? You already have losses. There is this phrase in business or business management called earn your mistakes. Okay? What does that mean? It means that all the money that I lost here and this one, and all the money I needed to put here, okay, both of these areas can be an investment, okay? Where's the investment here? I simply lost money and then I recouped. Where's the investment?
We could invest in a better system, for example, better firewall, which will help us next time.
Thank you, Carlo. Your investment
Like a 40 gate.
here.
we have
Your
to
investment is
we have to
here.
decide a change. We have to decide a change. Yeah.
This is your investment. Okay? This is where you take all the losses here, okay, and you add a little more, and now you have a much better functioning business than what you used to have. You started here, and now after that incident, your business is operating in a much higher level, okay? You gained power. Your incident caused bad things, your business dropped, but if you work right, you can gain more effectiveness, operations in your business and gain more power. So, what do we say about an incident? When you look at this, what is an incident to you as CISSPs, as CISOs?
Opportunity.
An opportunity. Thank you. Great. Domain 7, as you look here, this is domain 7, okay? Domain 7 is all about that opportunity to work in a routine environment, okay? This is your routine. This is the abnormality, okay? This is rocking the boat, but here you have the new routine. It's an opportunity at the end of the day to improve your business, okay? And that's what we want to do. That's our goal. Improve our business. Okay? I hope this is clear. This is the state of mind for domain 7. And I think part of domain 7 is, is a representative of a lot of what the CISSP main message is. We cannot protect everything. We cannot do everything, right? And if something happens and we play it right, we play our cards right, then we can probably gain a lot more, okay? So we gain more because we prepared ourselves for that incident, for that time during a year or month or decade that something unexpected will take place. This is a representation of risk management and representation basically of everything that we did because we prepared the ground for this something to happen. Okay, and that timeline that we drew is the timeline of the organization. At the end of the day, it's a representation of everything the organization does. Security exists in the organization, okay? Security is a result of a lot of things that happens in the organization. So, as you prepare yourself for the next ransomware attack, know that there is a possibility that a ransomware attack will be an opportunity for you. And opportunities, they can do a lot of good things. All right? Are we good?
Yeah.
All right. I know it's a different state of mind from what you used to, because we always say that we want to avoid ransomware, we want to avoid the bad things, but here the CISSP takes us to the next level of saying, yes, there is the routine, maybe nothing happens for 10 years, but when something happens, we want to be prepared, we want to be able to deal with it, and we want to be able to earn our mistake, okay, and to make our business better. So it's not about firing people, it's not about, disciplinary actions and so on. It's all about making the business better and making security better in the business with it. So let's look at the operation of the business, or the operation of the security within the business is the first part of the graph that we saw. This is the routine. Okay, so chapter 16 talks about the routine. What do we do in that first part that everything goes smoothly and we want to run the security? So as we look at the routine, I'm sorry, do you all see my screen? You see it now, right? Do you see my screen? Just give me an indication that you do. Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah. Yeah,
All
we
right,
do.
cool. All right, cool. Okay, so that's the first part of the routine. So let's look at what we do on the day-to-day basis. We do access control. This is a repetition of everything we talked about, but kind of a summary of everything together. We do access control based on the need to know and list privileges, right? Those are the first two principles of any access control, any connection between a subject and an object. We also do fraud prevention or fraud detection. And we do that when we do separation of duties and job rotation, and we want to prevent collusion between two or more employees, right? We want to be able to do or invest in prevention. We know now that prevention will eventually fail, and at that point of failure of preventing controls, this will be the point of the something happened, okay? Or something happens that we saw before, we saw on the graph. We will get to this in the next chapter. During our day-to-day operation, we also monitor privileged operations. We monitor how administrators are doing what they do and the fact that they are now trusted employees. We trust them with the network. We trust them to do their job right. We want to be able to monitor them for auditing, right? We say, okay, you are the identity that you claim for the IEEE, the identity that you claim. We authenticated you strongly, strong authentication. We know that we authorized your operation, need to know these privileges, but now we want to audit you. We want to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do. That's the day-to-day operation. On the day-to-day operation, normally we classify the information. We classify the information according to the information lifecycle that we saw, and we classify, we handle it, we store it, and we get rid of the information when we don't need it for the business ongoing operation. Again, the start, okay, that first blue line that we saw. We also do asset management. And assets can be cloud-based and they can be virtual assets or physical assets. When we talk about computerized environment, we talk about these two, virtual assets or cloud-based assets. The difference between the two, both of them are basically virtual assets of the organization, okay? Data assets, information assets that we can protect with the controls on the CINA of that information, but virtual assets are basically our assets in the organization. We can use the virtual machines to manage our virtual assets, and for that, we have certain vulnerabilities that are inherited from that topology of virtual machines, okay? But we also have the cloud-based assets, and the cloud-based assets, for that matter, are putting some of the responsibility, not accountability, responsibility at the hands of the vendor, the cloud vendor, okay? Again, that's the definition of assets, internal assets and external assets on the cloud, and we are now sharing the responsibility with our vendor. We are still accountable for everything that is in the cloud that is ours, okay, but now we have another partner called the vendor, and they can share some of the responsibility. We can have an insurance with them, professional liability insurance, and so on and so forth. Any vendor will be bound to the agreement that we signed with them. And I want you to add another part here, another note here on this slide. And with every contract that we have with a vendor, what we want to make sure is that we have the right to audit them, okay? So add that as a note to your presentation. Every contract with a vendor should include, for us, the right to audit. Okay, we want to make sure that they comply with whatever they signed on, with whatever they agreed to with our organization, all right? Okay, guys.
Mhm.
And if you remember, we talked about change management and we talked about configuration management, and I said on domain 7 we will meet that again. Basically, configuration management is the routine, right? You saw that. That was the line that we drew. That's the configuration engine. That's saying, you know, as long as there is oxygen in the air, people can breathe, we do the same thing. There will be either an incident, a change, something happens, okay, that takes us outside the routine. For that, if this is an initiated change by the organization, we want to be able to capture it, okay, do the math before the change takes place, and make the decision, prioritize the resources on that change. So that change will not cause an incident, okay? It's very important. A change, a managed change, will less likely to cause an incident. So this is a prevention of incidents. All right, guys, this slide is not a whiteboard, but it's very important for the CISSP. All right. Another thing that we do on the ongoing operation, the routine of the organization in terms of security, is patch management. Know that every patch or every patching operation that we do is a change. So it takes you back one slide when we talk about in questions, when we talk about patch management, it takes you to the slide of what is a change and how we manage changes. This needs to be approved and documented and reported and tested and then executed and then reported back, okay, on the impact. Patches, when we talk about massive patching management system, and this is most likely what you'll be asked on in your CISSP, you know, patches across the organization. We want to make sure that that we followed the change management procedure, right? We have the review board, we have the change requester, we have the change manager, and so on and so forth, right? Those 9 boxes that we mentioned for change. All right, guys? The decision to make this patching on or patch management process is based in the vulnerability assessment. So we kind of roll it back here, okay? First we do vulnerability assessment, and then we decide, okay, this is what we need to patch. These are the systems, these are the vulnerabilities that we want to patch. We want to patch the critical and the high, and everything else we'll leave for later, or we simply monitor them to see that they're not growing to be more vulnerabilities in a higher level than what we know of. And vulnerability assessment is the base of our patch management and then change management. Looking at cloud-based service model, this is an important one, okay? Not a whiteboard, not something you need to memorize and control, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning when I wake you up, but something you need to understand. So when we do cloud, we pass some of the responsibility to our vendor. The more cloud or the higher layer we use in cloud services, the more responsibility we can transfer to the vendor. We start with the infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, okay? The bottom one. The infrastructure as a service is basically saying to your vendor, I want to buy the hardware. I want you to assign certain hardware for me. I will do the platform, I will do the operating system, and I will do applications and services on top of it. But all I need from you is the hardware, because I cannot afford myself a server with 32 cores and I don't know how many, 128 gigabytes of RAM on it. I cannot afford that, so I buy that infrastructure from Amazon or from Google, okay? And they have the infrastructure, and they assign that hardware to me. Whatever I do with it, that's my decision. The responsibility for that hardware on the vendor side will most likely, for infrastructure as a service, for IaaS, again, in your CISSP exam, that responsibility will reside basically on physical security. IaaS equals physical security controls, most likely on the vendor side, all right? Maybe even awareness and stuff like that, but most likely physical security controls. As we progress from the hardware to the, now we make some sense into the machine itself, we add platform, we add operating system, okay? Now we can ask the vendor to patch the operating system for us. So what we buy from Amazon or Google now is Windows, whatever version you decide on, okay? You simply buy the platform. You buy a certain Linux machine, okay? Linux, Unix machine. They provide the hardware and they install the operating system, the start of the software hardware communication on that machine, okay? Now, as the vendor has our platform, we can require them to patch it and to provide us the latest patched Windows Server system. That's their responsibility. Every time we start that machine, we know that this machine has the latest patches and it's super secured, but whatever we put on it, it's our decision. The next level is SaaS, system/software as a service, okay? So Gmail, for example, or Exchange Online, what we buy from the vendor is the outcome, okay? It's layer 7, the application. We don't care what infrastructure it runs on. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And you know what? The platform should be up to date with everything that is out there. But now we also ask them to make the service, the system, the software itself, right, as secure as possible. And all relies, or the representation of all this is our agreement with the vendor. So for that one, the controls can be everything we learn about. Can be physical, technical, administrative, can be preventive, detective, corrective. We can ask the vendor to send us logs to our SIM system so we can analyze this and alert our SOX team when something happens on that service. Okay, so if we work with the G Suite, and the G Suite includes the Gmail, okay, so that's our mail system. Now, we don't ask questions on what it's based on in terms of hardware and such, but we want to get that platform working. If it doesn't work, or if we get suspicious activity there, we want to monitor that. That's when we can ask the vendor to do a lot more security for us. So again, yes, as an infrastructure, is mainly, its controls are mainly physical, maybe some administrative. Platform, both administrative and physical controls. SaaS, technical, administrative, and physical controls. You see that accumulated approach? Make sense to everybody? Okay. All right. We move to the next section. This one here is a representation of the timeline, of that line that I drew before on the whiteboard. This is a representation of the blue line. We have the routine that happens before the detection. There's a virtual circle here which says prevention. Okay, we will meet that later. But when something happened, we call it incident, right? The incident can take place an hour, 10 minutes, a day, a year, 10 years. The Target incident back in 2013 still takes place. There are a lot of lawsuits out there that are still not settled. There are a lot of vendors that went bankrupt and are still recovering from that. So the incident is still taking place. Much lower volume, we still don't hear about it. But 2020, you know, it's almost 7 years now. What do you mean it's almost? I think next week is Thanksgiving, Black Friday. That was the day of the incident. So 7 years almost to the day the incident is still taking place. An incident is something that influenced badly on our routine. But again, we can gain that incident. So when incident takes place, what we want to have in place is incident response plan, or IRP. This one here is a whiteboard. Okay, this slide here is a whiteboard because it represents all stages of incident response procedure plan. And ISC will ask you what stage comes before what in the incident response procedure or plan. Okay, so I want you to consider this a whiteboard. All right, guys, Carlo, Jega, and Aaron, I don't see you, so I don't see your reactions. I don't see if you write this down, but I want you to write it down. I want you to guys to work with the presentation. This is super important.
Okay.
All right, okay, guys. All right.
Yeah.
So let's look at the different phases. This was my routine, something before detection happens, but something happened, the incident happened, we want to be able to detect. So detection should be as minimum as possible, and we talked about that before. But as we detect, and it happened within a second, the first thing we do is respond to the detection, okay? So the response and detection, these two, and I want you to mark a line here after response, okay? Mark a line here in your presentation. These two, their objective is containment, okay? So to put whatever happened in a container, being able to say, okay, I gained control of the fire hazard, okay? If you go back to the whiteboard, you see that the objective there at that point was to gain control. Okay, so these are the first two. What you do after this, in this next three, so mark another line after recovery, between recovery and remediation, is that new routine, and then some of the curves, some of it start to look, to go up. Okay, and then we go up all the way until we get the business recovered. So these are the three. We mitigate, right? We remediate, mitigate. We do reporting if we need to go outside, if this is a public company, if people outside the organization are affected, we want to stand in the press and, announce what happened. This is reporting. This is external reporting, okay? And then we want to say business is recovered. So the objective here is to be transparent and bring business back to recovery, back to where it started, right? That's the objective we have here, right? This three, right? Are we all good?
Mhm.
The next two are that continuous line that continue to go up a little bit, no, not too much, but just a little bit, just enough for us to earn the mistake, to earn the incident. Okay, it's what we call investment. Okay, now we want to remediate the root cause that started all this, that failed. So we want to invest in that control, whether it was missing or not as effective. Okay, we talk about domain 6 now, effectiveness of controls. We want to remediate the root cause of the risk that led us to that incident, and now we want to learn about what happened. As we learn, we gain knowledge, we gain more power to the business, and this is our investment. Okay, guys? So this is really important. Here, the last two, the objective is to run a root cause analysis, RCA, right? Now, another thing I would like you to add to this slide is internal reporting. We have internal reporting. We do have reporting phase here, right? But this phase is external facing reporting to the public. We have internal reporting between every stage. Okay, so as you get your questions, your CISSP questions, look for the internal/external reporting. If they talk about reporting in general or external reporting, they talk about this phase here. If they talk about internal reporting or working with senior management or documenting the incident, they talk about internal reporting, which takes place after every phase of the incident response plan or procedure. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
All right, we all good?
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at what can trigger an incident. We have this phrase called botnets. We're all familiar with botnets, right? This is huge networks, robot networks that are acting as zombies and can produce a supercomputer equivalent to supercomputer processing power and memory, and those are out there and are part of the landscape of attackers. Okay, those are vulnerable computers, not ours. Vulnerable computers used to attack us. So this is part of the threat landscape. The vulnerability on our side can be a 0-day, and we talked about the 0-day exploits, 0-day from detection. Okay, that means that our vendor did not publish or is not aware of that vulnerability. And what we can do against them, or the detection mechanism that we can have in place for 0 days, is mostly on the behavioral or the behavior of the attacker. That's why you want to have some deception controls or deceptive controls. For example, honeypots or honey nets. Okay, deceptive controls will help you deal with 0-day potential. This 0-day, your controls will be triggered. Okay, in such way that you will notice that something is happening there, something that is not right. I don't know of any vulnerability that I have, but something is happening and I want to know about it, and I want to be able to respond to it in time, maybe even contain it if I can, right? The man in the middle was mentioned before previous times. The man in the middle is, when someone is trying to eavesdrop or to gain access to your communication lines. And to protect yourself against it, use encryption. That's the control we have against that. Sabotage versus espionage. Sabotage is someone from the outside trying to sabotage my business. Okay. Erase that. Okay. Sabotage is internal, is insider. Someone from the inside is trying to affect my business. So the incident starts from the inside with sabotage. Espionage is something from outside trying to steal my information, trying to gain information on what I do in my business. So again, sabotage, someone from the inside, internal controls, and then espionage, someone from the outside. We treat both of them as threat, but this is an internal threat and this is an external threat. Make sense, guys?
Yeah.
All right. IDS and IPS, kind of tricky here, okay? Because IPS will operate when the IDS detected something. So the IDS will trigger the IPS. Are you all familiar with this technology, IDS and IPS?
Yeah.
Based on rules and what we want to do as we implement IDS and IPS, IDS will be implemented as a detective mechanism, and IPS will sit silently, quietly on the side, and probably will not be operated unless the IDS said that this is time to operate. However, when we break down the definition of this, prevention should take place before detection, right? Do you see that?
Altogether.
Preventive control. If something happens and I prevent it, I don't need to detect it, right? So here, ISC would like to toy with your brain. They ask you what acts first, what control is IPS considered, okay? IPS in its right configuration is a corrective control. It's not a preventive control. For your CISSP questions, IPS is most likely a corrective control. I encourage you to look at the scenario, look at the question, but know that since the detection triggers the detective, the IDS triggers the IPS becomes a corrective control. And there are questions like this in the CISSP, and those are tricky questions. You know, intrusion prevention triggers preventive control, and the right preventive in your answers. But that's not the answer. If in the scenario, if in the question, you see that the IPS is dependent on the IDS to trigger it, that makes it a corrective control and not a preventive control. If it just sits there, just like a firewall with rules that prevent things from happening, now it's a preventive control and no argument in that. But if it depends on the trigger of the detection mechanism, that makes it a corrective control. Are we all good, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is really important because I've seen that time in CISSP exams, and the exam takers report on this constantly. Okay, so just be prepared for this. Remember the preventive, detective, and corrective. The order of these three is something that you need to have in mind when you have those IDS, IPS questions. Another type of IDS that we have, or two main types that we are considering here, are the HIDS and the NIDS. HIDS is host-based IDS. That's more on the workstation, on that machine, that single machine that we implement IDS. We want to detect things or anomalies on it. The network IDS is the wider one, organizational wide control that we want to have in place. And that one is much more effective to our overall security operations because the endpoints might be configured right, might not, but those include a lot of overhead, management overhead. We need to have people in place to manage them, to make sure the configurations work. You cannot rely on them to do the detection work as well as the NIDS, okay? So if you need to choose between the two, the most effective control of the two, NIDS will be your control, right? Deceptive mechanisms or deceptive controls, deceptive as in deception, okay? We fool the attacker. Deceptive controls can be honeypots and honey-nets, and I'm sure you're all familiar with that. Padded cells and pseudoflows are two new ones that I would like to emphasize for you. So padded cells are basically we can find them on the DMZ, on that proxy area or the filtered area. So before anything comes into the organization, it goes to the DMZ, to our padded cell, and if it contains a virus or some sort of malicious code, it explodes there. It doesn't cause anything to our LAN, to our organization. Padded cell are, for example, you can find them, you could find them back in the 80s in Israel, in the streets in Israel, because we had a lot of, trials of terrorists to implement bombs next to civilian populations, so next to schools and kindergarten and such. So we had padded cells in the streets. These pits covered with steel, and they have this opening when they took that potential bad with whatever it included, throw it inside. Hopefully it'll explode inside and not affect everyone around it. So those were the days back in the 80s, maybe even 90s, that we remember here in Israel. We don't have those anymore. Maybe we have some, but not across the country as much as we used to have. So those are the padded cell. You want that malicious code to come in and explode in that area, which will not affect your organization. Pseudo flows are those flows that we implement, deliberately implement in our system, in our software, in our code. Okay, we want to have those pseudo flows, the flaws in the system itself, so that a hacker or an attacker will hit these flaws and will say, "Oh my God, I have this wonderful password here. It's a clear password, username and password." And on your SIM system, on your detection mechanism, you say, if someone is using this username and password, it's because it's a pseudo-flaw in my system, and that can only mean one thing. I have a hacker on the way. Okay, they find the password and the username that I don't use anywhere in my organization. I only use it there. If they did, that means that my system is hacked. Now, silent alarm goes up, and my organization is under the assumption that we are breached, we are hacked. Okay, all we need to do is really buy more time and isolate that incident and contain that environment that we have now have the hackers in. Make sense, guys? All real good? Okay, very simple question. How do we block malicious code? We use antivirus, anti-malware. Okay, this is really what it is, and we should not elaborate on this more than what you can see here. Again, malicious code, antivirus, anti-malicious code, software of some sort. Manage that and educate your users. Penetration testing can be black, gray, or white. Okay, penetration testing is all about testing our controls. And the black box penetration testing means that our quote-unquote attacker or tester don't know much about the system or the environment that they're going to attack. They just know of it. Okay, they know about GCP. They get the external, the NAT address of our firewall, and that's it. They need to find out the brand. They need to penetrate the organization from the window, from the door, from wherever they can, and then present their findings. But that's not as efficient as a gray or white box penetration testing, because that one will probably challenge a vendor's machine. So they will probably challenge the Palo Alto firewall or Checkpoint firewall, and we do that. We don't want to check Checkpoint. Okay, we don't want to test Palo Alto for them. Palo Alto is doing their own tests. So when you do black box penetration testing, limit this in time. And you always need to scope your environment. You need to tell your tester, this is what I need you to test, not more than that, okay? You don't want to waste time. Remember that? Minimize expenses, okay? Back in the beginning of this bootcamp. Gray box means that you entered your attacker into your network, into your system, but you don't tell them anything. You say, okay, this is my LAN, or this is the segment that I want you to test. Now run your tools, okay, and see where it gets you. Maybe I give you a username just to work with, so you can try and get, maybe even get a lateral movement, go up a level with your user. Maybe you can gain a control on your admin. I want to know about this. I want to know about this result. The white box means that you get the architecture, you get the design, you get usernames, admin, and user for that system, and I want to know everything that you can do. Basically, I'm lowering all the guards, and you now act as a user, as an admin in my system, and I want that report from you on what controls you have seen and how effective are they. Okay, that's the three different types of penetration testing. Any questions on this? No, we're all good?
Yep.
All right. We now move to the incident definition. First, we have events. Events can be anything that happens on the network. Any line of log is an event, right? We might have 100 million lines of logs, which means 100 million events in the system. Every time a user logs in, every time a packet is sent, email is sent from here to there. Every time a firewall acts on one of its rules against something that happens from the outside, or a remote user is authenticated to our remote system, this is an event. Each one of this is an event. But from those, we need to separate the wheat from the chaff, and we need to screen the incidents. So taking a bunch of events, connecting them together can create one incident. Okay? However, not with every incident which have negative impact, not on every incident we would want to act. There might be incidents that we say, okay, this is under my risk appetite area, okay? I can absorb it, or I can live with the fact that those incidents happen. For example, a user get logged. You know, they typed in the wrong password. This is an incident. A user is logged. So, you know, we give them 15 minutes and we release them, or we send them online to this, change your password portal. And as you do that, you go through training on how to have a strong password. So we gain that mistake, but we don't respond. We don't investigate every incident. Okay, there are a level of incidents that we can actually investigate. So we screen from events. We screen those incidents. We connect events together in one line, and then we get incident. But then, incidents needs to be investigated. They need to be investigated, and then from those incidents, we choose the ones that we actually want to investigate. Investigation of an incident can take time, resources, and attention. So as you do that, your attention is in that area and is not directed to the ongoing operation, which we want to be in our day-to-day routine. So how do you get the events and incidents and investigation as efficient as possible? Most organizations implement today or use services of a SIM system. The SIM system is doing exactly this. It aggregates all the logs, okay? Starts with log aggregation, collects logs from all systems that you choose to send their logs to that. Okay? It's called log sources, all right? And then from that, after aggregating all the logs, it correlates the events, okay? Correlation of events means that now we tell a story of what happened. An event here, an event there, an event there. For example, 8 o'clock in the morning, an admin account, a domain admin account, is added to our network. That's event number one. Then later on the day, that admin account logged into or accessed the finance department directory. They're allowed to do that. That's event number two. And then that admin account, after half an hour of entering viewing this directory, started copying 4 terabytes of information from the financial department directory to an external source, for example, Google Drive. Okay, and then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that user has been deleted. So you have one event here, one event there, one event there, and one event there on a timeline of a day or a year or 10 years. Okay, but the SIM system will tell you now the story. If you configured it right, the SIM system can tell you, okay, I see the event here and here and here, and here is the potential connecting line that will make it an incident. Does that make sense? Right. And as we map those incidents with the SIM system, we want to investigate them. So we investigate according to a threshold that we decide on, okay? That threshold in the SIM system, as mentioned before, it's all about statistics. We decide that from level 0 to 10, from level 1 incidents to level 10 incidents, 10 being the highest incident, we choose to deal with level 4 and up, or we choose to deal with level 7 and up, simply because we don't have enough people, simply because we don't have enough resources, or simply because we have a lot of white noise in our system, a lot of logs everywhere, okay? Not everything is an incident, so we set the threshold, okay? And that is called clipping level. When we do sampling, called clipping level, we set the threshold of which from it and above it, we want to respond to these incidents and investigate them, right? Like statistical sampling, when we say this is the population and I want to sample some of it and then make a conclusion against the rest of the entire population, here we say we set a threshold. So clipping is setting a threshold and is used in your SIM systems. Security audits and review, that's mentioned before in domain 6. And as we do that, we want to make sure everything is documented and everything can be audited. One special area of the business that we constantly want to audit and we constantly want to get logs on, and it's important to log in using your SIM system is the access of privileged accounts, okay? Those accounts are the accounts that your attackers are looking for. And you want to monitor those accounts. So even if you don't have the time to deal with all other incidents, an incident that includes an admin account is an incident that must be investigated, right? Guys, this is important. If you get a CISSP question on incidents and events, and you realize that it relates to privileged accounts, okay, some sort of privileged account, this will trigger an incident. And the whole chain of incident, all 7 phases that we saw previously. First, we want to do the containment. Then we want to do the business recovery. And then we want to do the lessons learned, even if it takes 10 minutes or even if it takes 10 years, right? Privileged accounts trigger management, trigger incident response plan. All right, guys? Are we all good?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions on this chapter? No? All right. Let's take 20 minutes break. We'll be here at 12:06 your time. We all good? All right, guys. See you in 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.